Thanks for coming. The awkward silence before the talk actually begins.
There we go.
I want to ask
What's that?
for announcements first or last?
We're going to do announcements last. And what we're going to actually start off with is just introduce yourself. You know, how do you get into sales, this crazy thing called sales, and maybe share one interesting tidbit about yourself that most people might not know about you.
All right. So I got into sales just like everybody else. I fell into it. I don't know if this is still not working.
You're good.
It works. You guys can hear it. All right. So got into sales just like everybody else. There's no majors in sales, so I got my degree in marketing. Drank my way through college, got out, and figured I was going to make my mark and realized I wasn't going to make any money doing it. So I got into sales with Black & Decker in DeWalt. Thankfully, I don't know if you guys seen those Dodge Ram pickup trucks driving around giving away free tools. That was my first job out of college, pretty much the coolest thing I could have ever done. Ever seen the ice cream truck coming on to a kid's playground, all the kids come running out? That was me for construction workers. So I did that for a few years, sold to Home Depot, that type of thing, and then got into real sales at Xerox. Anybody here sell copiers? Oh, good for you. Talk about selling a commodity, right? Like 45 pages a minute over 42 pages a minute, right? So did that for a while, got my teeth kicked in, and then started a company with a couple of buddies of mine from high school called Thrive Networks. It's actually local here in Boston. Did outsourced IT services, had no idea what I was doing, so I took every training, Sandler, Miller, Hyman, Taz, all of it. And came across Basho. Some of you might have heard of it. It's Basho training, Basho Technologies. Loved it. Used it, helped grow Thrive up. Ended up being one of the fastest growing companies here in Massachusetts for a while. Got us to about 85 million, or 85 employees, I wish 85 million. And about 12 million in revenues, and then Staples bought us. Spent about a year going through that. Realized apparently I'm not a corporate guy. I don't have much of a filter, as you'll probably figure out tonight, and I really don't like playing politics. So after a little while, Staples offered me another position. It was a nice way of firing me. And then Basho came knocking and said, "Johnny, want to be a trainer?" I said, "No, I don't like trainers." And they asked why. I said, well, most trainers I had come across were either failed sales professionals or professional presenters, and I didn't want to be part of that. And so, but they said, "Don't worry, you have to use all these techniques to sell so you can train, so you can get paid." So I was like, "I like that." So I joined Basho, took on some bigger accounts, brought on some of the bigger ones, and then they screwed it all up and I took it over and went off on my own. So now I train companies like Salesforce, LinkedIn, Box, Dropbox, a lot of the SaaS companies, most of them out in San Francisco. I just got on off the red eye, so I apologize, I'm a little groggy this morning today. But yeah, and as far as fun fact, I guess one that most people don't know is I worked for Jack Welch, GE Jack Welch, for a couple months getting his online MBA program off the ground. He was my all-time business idol. Some kid found me off of LinkedIn and told me, "I got an offer for you to work for one of the leading CEOs in the country." And I was like, "Shut up, whatever, this is stupid spam." He was like, "John, it's Jack Welch." And I'm like, "Shut up." But you got my attention, and sure as shit, it was Jack Welch. So I went out and interviewed with Jack Welch down in Florida, Jack and Susie. And he's a Boston guy through and through. And picture this, like I'm sitting across the state, like from my idol, right, from my business idol, and I don't get nervous very much anymore. I was nervous. And he goes, he's like, "All right, so," and he had gotten himself involved in this bad university or whatever. First thing out of his mouth, right? He's like, "So let me tell you about this bag of shit college Chancellor University I got myself involved in." He's like, "Boy, did I make a fucking mistake?" And I'm like, "Jack, I love you." Okay, 2 hours later, he drops the F-bomb every other word, and I was like, "This is my life, I love you." So did that for a couple of months, and then they shifted in a different direction, so I decided to come back and do this thing. So now I'm traveling all over the world, training some sales reps on techniques, stuff I've learned, mistakes I've made, all that wonderful stuff. So there it is.
Were you out in Asia recently? Did you do that trip?
Did I do what? Oh
Asia.
yeah, I went to Singapore for a day. That's never fun. You know, when you leave, I left on a Monday, landed on Wednesday, trained Wednesday, came home Thursday. When you're in the air for like 45 hours and you're on the ground for less than 12, it kind of screws with your head a little bit, but I'm used to it, so.
So don't do the there and back Asia trip. I tried that with London actually last month.
Yeah.
Not that fun, staying there for a day and going back. But we're going to be talking about this topic, and we've been bouncing around a few ideas. And one of the things that really came to mind was there's all this stuff around just automation. And I got to tell you, I wrote a post earlier in the year called "Spam a Lot" or "Entering Spam a Lot" because it just seemed like I was getting inundated with a lot of cold email blasts and the chains, and I think some of us have experienced that. Some of us may be on the sending end of some of those. Some guilty as charged. Any hands up? But what's going on? Why is this happening?
Yeah, I mean, all these tools are great, like all these sales automation tools, but the problem is they're turning these reps into robots. You know, you got the marketing automation tools, which marketing uses to blast out all those emails, and that's fine. But the line between sales and marketing right now is just getting too blurred. And what happens is, you know, a company goes and tries to, you know, invest in one of these sales automation, but the marketing team says, no, you know, we got Marketo, we got Eloqua, we can do that ourselves, but that's trying to turn sales reps into mini marketers. So then sales goes ahead and invests in the Town app, the Yesware, whatever, name one, and they, oh no, these are sales automation tools, but then they end up blasting out template emails and just clicking buttons. And so, you know, I think the average sales rep is going to die a pretty painful death right now in the next few years, because marketing automation is just coming upstream too fast. You layer on artificial intelligence into what's happening. You guys paying attention to what's happening in artificial intelligence? Like, that shit is crazy, crazy. Like, IBM Watson, you guys know IBM Watson, right? You want to hear a scary story? I wrote a post at the beginning of the year with my predictions for 2016, and you know, I talked about artificial intelligence, whatever. And all I said in a long blog post was, hey, if you've been watching those IBM Watson commercials, that thing's getting scary smart. That's all I said. I posted on LinkedIn, no joke, 30 seconds later, I had an email in my inbox from a VP of sales over at IBM Watson. Say, hey John, I'd like to talk to you about some of your sales training stuff. And I'm like, that was a little too coincidental. Okay. And he's like, could you please coordinate schedule with Sarah? And he gave me Sarah, his executive assistant. He gave me her email address. And so I was like, all right. So I screenshotted the email, right? Because I use Outlook, and I put it in my email. And I said, hey Sarah, you know, Kevin reached out to me, wanted to set up a meeting, and I use TimeTrade. You know those calendar sharing tools like TimeTrade or Calendly or any of that. So I sent a link, and I said, hey, here's my calendar. Pick a time that works for Kevin, whatever. She hits me back almost immediately with. Sorry, John, I'm not in a position where I can click on links or attachments. Could you please just send me some options? And I'm like, where the hell are you that you can't click on a link or an attachment? And so I was like, whatever. So I sent her a couple options. Long story short, it took me 3 emails back and forth with Sarah to realize that Sarah wasn't an actual human being. So it's a fully automated, like artificial, and I'm pretty slick. Like I got a lens for that. You know what I mean? Like I know when marketing's trying to pretend like they're sales and that type of. The only reason I realized it was, so I get on the phone with Kevin. I'm like, Kevin, thanks for reaching out. I have a quick question here. Who's Sarah? And he's like, she's my assistant. I go, is Sarah real? He goes, depends on what your definition of real is. I said, holy shit. So my point is that automation is coming upstream and it's going to take over. I mean, whether you think it or not, it's not my opinion, by the way. It's actually happening. And then you got consumers having far more access to information than they ever had before. If you follow a challenger sale, that type of thing, by the time the inbound lead hits us, you got sales reps sitting in the middle there, just getting lazier and lazier and lazier, blasting out template emails, making generic cold calls, asking banned questions, press and play on demos. All that stuff is going to get replaced here in the near future. Like, and I'm not talking like 10 years down the road. I'm talking like next year, the year after. I'm watching it happen. And so if we don't wake up a little bit, we're going to get replaced.
So it's almost like we're teaching robots to replace us.
Absolutely.
And because we're acting like robots.
Absolutely. And the one question that you have to ask yourself, the reps have to ask themselves is, what can we do that a computer can't? Because if a computer can do it, you just got to straight up ask yourself, how much longer am I going to have a job? How much longer are they going to pay me to do this? What's up, Joe?
Leadership, right? So you have a lot of reps in the room who are doing what they're told to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
why haven't the sales leaders gotten their wake-up call? Realizing that more ain't more better. More email ain't more better,
Jill,
right? So
that's so on point. I almost, because I get these calls from VPs of sales asking like, what's going on, or what should I be doing? I tell them, why aren't you investing in core sales skills? You're investing in people. I mean, you must have experienced this yourself, Jill. We're investing in tools and technologies. We love the shiny thing, but we aren't truly investing in the people that are out there that are our first line of contact with customers. I mean, what about that? I mean, what's this trend away from sales skills and investing more in technology. I mean, do you see anything that's going on there?
Well, I mean, it's just like any industry, right? Any industry, the technology comes in to automate, to hopefully make it cheaper so you don't have to have the labor to do it, right? Think manufacturing, think any of that stuff. So the promise that marketing automation gave us when it came out was, well shit, all we gotta do is turn this thing on and we're gonna light up the world with inbound leads and this is gonna be fantastic and everybody's gonna love this stuff. And so the answer is more, well, cost of sale, all this stuff, but the problem is now that nobody really knows how to use these tools, they end up investing in one tool, and then another tool, and then another tool, and they end up spending way more money on the tools than they do on their people. And if you don't have people that can use these stupid tools, what's the point? I'd rather have a kid out of school with no tools at all and some skills to go out there and make some phone calls and be thoughtful with their approach than some automated robot, or just go the exact opposite and just automate everything. And just say, forget it. I'm just going to hammer marketing, automate. I'm going to hire customer service people. We're going to drive tons of inbound leads, and we're going to have customer service reps take phone calls as opposed to sales reps trying to sell anybody anything. And that's where things are going. There was a post on LinkedIn that came, some guy, some CEO, some of you might have seen it, said, I'll never hire another sales rep ever in my life.
I remember that one.
Remember that one? Right? It lit off like fire. I mean, I've never seen a post go faster than that one in my life, and it was like 50% down the middle. Like 50% of people like, yeah, man, I'm never gonna hire another stuff. Other people like, screw you, man, you screwed on my profession. And it was, and he was saying, he's like, look, you know, sales reps are incented for all the wrong reasons. It's end of the month, it's this, it's whatever, and so they're not incentivized to actually, you know, care about the client, what they need. So what he said he was going to do is hire marketing automation, hire customer service people. My comment, I had the comment, was, look, what you just described as sales reps are bad sales reps. Like that, everything you just described about what a sales rep did, that's just a shitty sales rep. Everything that you just described what customer service does, that's actually what good sales reps do.
Well, let's actually dig into that, because I think there's a misconception of what salespeople really should be doing. Okay? So, what would you consider as core fundamental skills that any rep, because we have a lot of SDRs, a lot of young folks coming in, they're not really getting a foundational training. It's not like the days back in IBM or whatever where they would spend six months to 12 months like really training and coaching these new reps. Now we do like onboarding for a week or 2 weeks, throw people out on phones and say, go for it. What should we be teaching?
You know, less product and more skills. I mean, I think we dump product down their throat, and so kids come out and that's the only thing they know to talk about. So that's what they talk about. They talk about speeds and feeds and all the things that they know. I think the core fundamentals, like how to ask better questions. You know, I mean, the basic open-ended and closed-ended questions. You know, layering questions, stuff like that. You know, how to tell a story. I'll tell you, here's a tip for everybody in this room. If there's one thing, if you're in marketing, by the way, and if you're in sales with a company that doesn't have a really good marketing presence, the number one investment I would make is case studies. I would just case studies. That's my favorite way of selling, because it's a story. And I'll give you nuggets. I always like tips and nuggets. My favorite way, for instance, to run a call blitz is to take a case study and look at the bottom, like reverse engineer a case study. Look at the bottom of a case study and say, what result did you drive for that client? Right? Not say like, oh, we showed this client, you know, on average our clients see A or up to a third. That's marketing language. What I want to be able to say is, no, we showed this company in your industry how to drive these type of results, right? And that's what I call an attention grabber, right? And so now, because that's going to fit a certain persona, right? That's like because CIOs in the healthcare industry have different priorities than CIOs in the manufacturing industry, right? So if I understand what those priorities are and I have a message to speak to that, I can ask 2 or 3 questions that are relevant to that person. Instead of saying, shit, like, oh, tell me about your priorities, I can say, oh, you know, so we're working with other CIOs in the healthcare industry who are telling us their priorities X, Y, and Z. Are those the same that you got? And now I got a story to tell. So I know I got my attention grabber to get your attention, I got 2 or 3 questions, and I got a story to tell. And that right there is, I think, enough value, because I think the BDR, SDR role is probably, no, it's not probably, it is the most challenging role in sales. Because the value is getting smushed. Marketing automation's doing this, and so the question is from a SDR, BDR role, for those of you who don't know SDR, BDR, that's the one who does the outbound cold calling just to set the meeting. If they don't add enough value, then the client doesn't see any value in going to the next level. If they add too much value, then they take it away from the AE, and now all of a sudden the field rep doesn't have enough to talk about. So what's that value? And I think that value is the story, that case study. So I think going back to what we should be teaching them how to ask better questions and be genuinely curious. To stop with the product knowledge. I don't think you need to be a product expert, by the way. I don't think you need to be, I don't know shit. I know this much about a lot. all right? But I know enough though to ask the right questions and connect the dots. That's why I think sales reps need to know. They don't need to be the product experts. They need to know enough to not get themselves in trouble.
No, I agree. It was kind of funny. Again, it's something on LinkedIn. I was watching this, reading this post that Manuel Scala. She just asked a question about, a topic that she was going to talk about, maybe at Dreamforce, what have you. And I think the one that really sparked the most interest was this thing that she called the art of the conversation. Because I think we just do a terrible job at teaching reps how to actually have a conversation. I got my start doing spin selling, but what do you recommend as maybe some tools or some guidance that help ask better questions?
Yeah, I mean, spin's great. I actually still think spin is relative if done right. But I think what we need to avoid is stuff like the BANT stuff. You know what I mean? Like budget, authority, need, and timeline. I think the biggest factor there is need. Right? So forget about budget. I don't give a shit about budget. I can't tell you how many people that I've been able to sell who said straight up early on, I don't have budget for this. Right? Well, you do have budget. That just means you don't see value in what I'm bringing to the table for you. Right? Budget, by the way, is a total crap objection. Anybody thinks budget's a real objection, that's a total crap objection. What they're saying there is that I don't see value in your solution. That's what they're saying. Because if you had zero money in your pocket right now, but I said, if you give me $10, I'll give you $100 back, would you go find $10? You find it, right? I'll help you find it. So budget's crap, authority, whatever. If there's a need there, I can find somebody that has authority and make my case. Right. Timeline's kind of important, right? But need is the biggest thing. So I think, it's tough because I can't say that there's one methodology or whatever, but I think the genuinely curious, here's an idea. Have in your companies, have your CFO sit up on a stage like this and have your sales reps stand down there and ask questions, thoughtful questions, and whoever asks the best questions, most insightful questions, goes out to lunch with the CEO or something like that, right? Because a lot of our clients don't, like a lot of our reps, we don't leverage the resources we have internally to learn. And I remember Ryan's in there. Ryan used to be on one of my team at Thrive. And I used to remember some of the reps on my team would come in and be like, John, I'm having a really hard time talking to CFOs. I can't really get through to them. I'd be like, hold on a second. Hey, Calvin, are you a CFO? Yes, John. Do you get calls from sales reps all the time trying to sell you crap? Yes, John. Would you mind talking to Ryan about how to sell to a CFO? Sure, John. Right? Hey, Shelly, are you a secretary? Yes, John. Are you a gatekeeper? Yes. Can someone of my reps talk to you about how to get through a fucking gatekeeper? Sure, John. I think it's this, reward those questions, right? And teach them the structure. Like, what is an open-ended question? What is a closed-ended question? Examples of, I used to actually have it when I was early on in sales. I had, because I'm a very visual learner, so I would have in my queue, open-ended questions, closed-ended questions, layering questions. And I would put them up there. And during the qualification phase, I would put a big red X through the closed-ended ones, and a circle around the open and the layering ones. Could you explain to me how? Could you clarify for me? What I heard you say was, is that accurate? That type of stuff. Like those are just, people aren't curious anymore. They're just trying to sell. One last point is, the problem is that we're all monthly quota oriented. That's the other part. Like, if I'm doing a VP of sales again for a team, I'm backing off of that. I'm doing quarterly stuff because the month-to-month bullshit forces people to do shady ass stuff. It forces people to stuff down things that, the discount at the end of the month close, which is just sad. That's just a sad way of selling. So I'd back off a little bit on some of those metrics of hardcore, but if you're a publicly traded company, you got investors, that's the problem, is that we are all so short-term oriented that we're looking for that thing. Whereas if the client, if you just waited a couple of weeks, they would have signed a much bigger contract for a much longer term. You just destroyed the relationship because you called and you had to hit your quota. That's the problem with leadership, in my opinion.
That's a huge problem. It's the way to structure. To me, it's always comes down to the behaviors you actually get from your team originate from how you incent them.
Yep.
So, but we should talk about that another time because that's going to, that could be a topic in and of itself, just the whole compensation and incentive compensation conundrum. But keep it on that level. But you had a really interesting post. And it really kind of sparked a lot of questions I had for folks, and it was, what are you actually putting in some of these emails? Because I can't tell you how many times I've seen did you get my last email? Subject lines, RE. how are you doing? Can we touch base? Touching base, that seemed to be, like, that's a sore one.
Yep.
It seemed to be a sore one for you, so what the hell?
Yeah, it's the touching base and checking in and following up, ping you later bullshit. And by the way, if there's nothing any of you do different walking out of today's, just never touch base or check in ever again, please. It means there's absolutely no reason for your call, so there's absolutely no reason for me to talk to you. You gotta have a reason. It just do like 2 seconds of research. It doesn't take that long. People think that they gotta do all sorts of research and it's gonna take them all this time. What, you can flip open somebody's website on the front page and usually pick something up. And if you just even say, hey, congratulations on that award, all of a sudden you've differentiated yourself over 90% of the sales reps out there. And you've heard a lot of, hopefully a lot of you have heard about trigger-based selling, right? Look for triggers. You open up a new office, you launch a new product, those type of things, or a quote from an executive. That type of stuff is what gets people's attention. Let me ask you this. Here's a universal truth in sales and human behavior here. What is the #1 thing on the planet that everybody loves talking about? Sales. What's the biggest problem in sales? We all love talking about ourselves. We're the leading provider of. I don't give a shit. I'd like to introduce myself to you. I don't care who you are. Right? I'd like to introduce myself. I mean, if you're a client, if I'm a vendor, like if you're a vendor of mine and a new account manager is taking over, sure, introduce, hey John, I'm your account manager, and point of contact. If I'm a prospect of you, I do not give a shit who you are, right? Or leading provider of. Here's a challenge for you. Go out and look at 100 websites and find me one company that's not the leading provider of something, all right? Fundamentally start with them. That's the only thing that people care about. It's the only thing. But the problem is people dig too deep to find that perfect thing. You don't have to dig that deep. Let me ask you, some of you, I bet you have solutions where if somebody has multiple locations, right, like 10, 15 different locations, I bet some of you out there have a solution that can support somebody that has a complex environment, right? There's multiple locations, remote people, whatever it is. There's a reason. And by the way, how long does it take for you to find out how many locations somebody has on their website? Like 3 seconds? I'm betting some of you have a really strong tie to social, like if somebody has a really strong social media presence, they got a lot of Facebook followers, that type of thing, right? And you can add value to that if somebody has a really strong social media presence. Well, how long does it take to figure out how big of a social media presence somebody has on their website? Like literally seconds. All you have to do is take that 2 seconds to make it somewhat relevant to me based on my role, based on what you saw about me. And Jill will attest to this. They are telling you what they want. They are. It's out there, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Snapchat, which I'm on these days. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but whatever. They're talking. You just got to figure out where they're talking and listen for that stuff to make those connections.
Case in point, I got an email recently from someone, subject line, it was blah, 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 heavy metal. And that person actually did the research because my blog, my personal blog, it's all just about heavy metal. And I actually have it in my Twitter account, right? So this person was like, they took at least, it took like 15 seconds tops to find out that that's what I listened to.
Yep.
And it made me open. So just think about just the power of finding that one thing that a person cares about that references them. I mean, that changed the world. So
And there's one more thing, just one nugget tip. To get rid of touching base and checking in, by the way, when you make your phone calls, when your reps make the phone calls, use this phrase. Start all your conversations off with the simple phrase, the reason for my call is. Just do that. Because if you can't finish that sentence, you shouldn't be making the phone call. And it better be something better than I want to sell you something, all right? Hey, the reason for my call today is on your website. I noticed you're a metal fan, and we work with a lot of metal fans who do this, whatever it is. The reason for my call, the reason for my call, the reason for my call. Say that, and it'll change your confidence, and it'll change your results, I promise you.
Yeah, confidence, big. I think that's the biggest challenge I get with a lot of reps, that they don't feel confident because they're trying to push the product, they're trying to have these really uncomfortable conversations when they don't need to be. That being said, I mean, there is a role for automation and sticking around, and I do think that there is benefits for reps. So I'm going to just ask this last question, and I'd love to open it up for questions for folks. So if you have questions, start tweeting them up now. But how do you leverage automation in a way that can still feel personal?
Yeah, so the way I do it, just to break it down, is I start with, first of all, your territories, right? I always start with an exercise of tiering out your accounts. Like, you got your tier 1s, your tier 2s, your tier 3s. Most reps just grab their territory and they start at A and they start mowing through it. Wrong. Not all prospects are created equal. So you really figure out what that ideal customer profile is. You guys hear about that with account-based selling and those type of things. figure out what that looks like, right? And those, like I always recommend everybody have a top 25, like a top 25 list of tier 1 accounts. Those are the ones I'm going to follow on social media. Those are like, through, I'm going to follow them on Twitter, I'm going to use Owler, I'm going to use Sales Navigator, those type of things, and listen to those accounts, right? My tier 2s, that's my quantity approach. That's my quantity approach, right? Maybe they're a little bit smaller, but there's a bigger volume of them, right? And the key thing there is, I think the pyramid of effectiveness, but also time, is at the top is, I'm on your website, I'm on your LinkedIn profile, I'm sending a very customized, email to you. Sorry. That's the top, but that takes a lot of time. The tier down from that is industry and role. All right? Because again, I was saying earlier, CIOs in the healthcare industry have different priorities than CIOs in the manufacturing industry, right? If I understand what those priorities are, I can craft a message that speaks to that. And so what I can do is I can segment out my database. The more nuanced you can get in the qualification criteria, the better off you're going to be, right? So you want to find out not just industry and size and stuff like that. You want to find out like what kind of social media presence do they have, what kind of technologies are they using, what competition is in there, like all these little things, right? The more stuff you can get, the more you can segment your database and run lists based on certain criteria. So for me, like, if you're using Salesforce, like they're my biggest client, if you're using Salesforce, that's fantastic for me, right? That's a tier 1. If you're using Microsoft Dynamics, that's okay, right? It shows you're invested. If you're using like Actor Goldmine or something like that, it's just not my target audience. So what I do is I call up and I say, hey, trying to get into it through a gatekeeper. Oh no, he or she's in a meeting, can I push it through their voicemail? Sure, no problem. Hey, do you guys use Salesforce? Yeah, we do. Why do you ask? I was just curious, thanks, click. And then I check off the box in Salesforce that says they use Salesforce, and then I can run a report in Salesforce and say, I want to see every VP of sales in the SaaS industry that uses Salesforce. And that might only be 30 or 40 names in my territory. Shut this thing off. Sorry, this is just wicked annoying. I can run a list that says, I want to see every VP of sales in the SaaS industry that uses Salesforce, and come up with a message that resonates with them, right? Because I know what VPs of sales in the SaaS industry care about. And so then the other thing, and the huge takeaway of what I train on, and hopefully what you walk out of here today with is split testing. A/B split test everything you do, right? As a sales rep, marketing does this all day, every day, right? Sales needs to do way more of this. So if I'm going after VPs of sales in the SaaS industry that use Salesforce, and I got a list of 50 of them, I'm going to send 25 emails out with one approach and 25 emails out with another approach, and automate it through a tool like whatever, so I can track it and make sure I know, like, okay, which one's actually resonating better. So I think the more segments you can be, then you can get the volume up there without blasting out a million emails. Leave the blast of a million emails out to marketing. That's their job. Let them do that. We need to stay between a targeted message and a tailored message. All right?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we want to do the big numbers.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we're going to blast out 1,000 contacts, 1,000 accounts, right? But we actually do ourselves a huge favor if we actually narrow down and do smaller.
Well, there's actually a debate. I'm not going to name any names. There's another trainer out there that advocates, and I actually wrote a post on this, where it's the top-down approach, the death of the top-down approach, right? Where you send an email to a CEO and say, hey, this is what we do, can I talk to you about this? You get the referral, and then you call that person, right? And say, hey, your boss told me to talk to you, right? That's pretty effective if done right, but the problem is it's been bastardized, because now what happens is reps take a pretty generic message, this is what we do, here's the 3 clients we work with, who can I talk to, and then they just hammer the C-suite. And I was actually doing a training recently, and the CEO stood up. I was like 300 people, and I'm talking about top down and all this other stuff. And the CEO stood up. He's like, I'm calling bullshit on this. I'm like, damn. Like CEO of his company, I'm doing their sales kickoff. I'm like, oh, this is probably not going to go well. And he's like, I get 50 emails a day from sales reps sending me emails saying, who can I talk to about this? And I don't respond to one of them. It drives me crazy. He's like, and I delete them all. He's like, because most of the time it's blatantly obvious who the right person is. He's like, we have an HR software. Who's the best person to speak? An HR director. Right? Seriously? But, and I was like, okay. I go, but let me ask you this. Are most of those generic emails that go out with a generic thing and name a couple of clients and ask you, and he goes, yeah, that's what they're all like. Oh, okay. If you got an email from somebody that went on your 10K or your annual report, peeled out something that was one of your priorities and crafted a message around that and sent it to you, would you pay attention to that one? He goes, oh, absolutely. I go, okay, so that's the point, is that it's not that the top-down approach doesn't work anymore, it's just it's been generic, right? And now people blast it out. So you put the thought into it, and this not going to name who it is, But he says that, hey, whatever, if I send out 1,000 emails and get 10 appointments, what's the difference? If you did, and you send out 50 emails and get 10 appointments, what's the difference? Like, we both got 10 appointments. And I'm like, because you just pissed off 990 people that you are not going to be able to go back to. And I can now go back to those 990 people and have a thoughtful message, and I don't have to absolutely litter my database, because not only are we going after them, but so is marketing. How many of you bump into each other where marketing just litters your clients, and then you make a phone call or something like that into them, and you pretty much are the exact same thing, and you're already on the spam filter? So if you're not differentiating from marketing, what's the difference? What's the difference? So
absolutely, I have to tell you, I don't take that approach, because I just think that there's if you're in the consumer world,
yeah,
you have millions
sure.
of people. In our world of B2B, you don't have millions, you don't have multiple thousands of potential clients.
Nope.
Hey, you start to piss them off with your messaging, and you're going to see your downfall pretty quickly. People aren't going to pick up anything you ever send.
I mean, I'll tell you right now, the company that I'm having the biggest challenge with right now is because of how aggressive they've been in Salesforce. Salesforce is my biggest customer, right? And I do everything I can to teach them to send really tailored emails, but yet they still blast out. And because they're growing so aggressively, they flip territories every week, right? And so now all of a sudden, that rep that comes into that new territory takes those exact same templates, blasts out the exact same emails, and all of a sudden people are like, leave me alone. Like, I do not, even if I want your solution, I want nothing to do with it. So like, that's why they have, their territories are getting smaller, their quotas are going up. So they have to be more thoughtful with their approach, or else they're just not, and kids ask me all the time, John, what do I do? Because I'm getting, take me off your list, I'm getting, do this. I'm like, you have to back off. You have to add value for once, right? You have to think about why you're reaching out to somebody and have a detailed contact strategy around it. It's not about the one email, it's not about the one voicemail. It's about the contact strategy. So what are multiple things we can say to these people to get them to think? I wrote that post a little while ago. So I think it's our job in sales these days to get our clients to think, right? It's no longer we have the information. It used to be that, you know, we have the information and you as a client either had to come to me or I had to go to you to show you this nice, shiny, cool thing, right? Now the information's out there. They can find it. Now it's our job to get you to think. And I use the dumb example, because there's not one industry right now that is safe. Not one industry that is safe based on what's happening with technology, right? I mean, I use the dumb example like, you know, do you think the taxi industry had any idea that Uber was coming? No clue, right? And now they're back on their heels and they're trying to play catch up, and they're not going to catch up. They're not going to catch up. There's industries that will be wiped out in the next 5 years because somebody comes up with a cool app that just does that, right? Watson is going to take over lawyers, healthcare. Like, it's going to happen, right? So the question, like, steady state today is just not acceptable anymore. And so that's why I think even if you're not ready to buy right now, my job is to get you to think so that, you know, it's kind of like Inception, you know the movie Inception? Right? Like I love plant that
used that
seed.
example like,
Right?
just the other day.
Yeah, but I'm plant that. Now I don't want to go 10 layers deep here and be there for 50 years or anything, but I want to plant that seed and get you to think, and then nurture you through social media and throwing things at you every once in a while and hitting you with, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And then reaching out every once in a while and saying, hey, we should talk about this. And that's how you can switch that, take me off your list, to, holy crap, I see value in you, and you're not just a sales rep trying to cram something down my throat all the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important. I think our job as salespeople, if we're going to actually matter in 10 years, in 5 years, next year, you got to really think about yourself, not as a salesperson, but as an agent of change in these organizations. Because the organizations aren't going to change in and of themselves. And that's what salespeople do. And if it's not for salespeople going in and getting clients to think, getting these companies to think, nothing ever happens. And so you have a huge responsibility as a salesperson. You have an open opportunity to have those type of conversations, but not if you're sending like, you know, feature, function, product spiels. I want to know, like, there's a bunch of folks that have been kind of like dying to ask some questions. Please just raise your hand. Just one thing I would request. I want to know your name, what company you're with, and ask away. So right here up in the front.
How do you deal with compliance? I'm like, compliance hates me because I don't follow the rules. So how do you get away with that?
Okay,
Well,
so
in what way? As far as sharing information, like help me understand a little bit more about the compliance piece.
Everything, like whether it's on my LinkedIn, whether it's sending emails. Now I just try to just get people on the phone because I don't want, like, compliance came in like 2 weeks ago and they had a conversation with me and they were like, oh, you need to follow these rules. I'm like, I'm not going to follow rules because you don't get anything done following rules.
So just for the folks on the live stream and stuff, questions just about compliance, how to do some of this stuff when you have compliance that's basically telling you this is only things you can talk about. And we're actually going to have a session next month. Unfortunately, it's going to be in New York, but it's going to be selling into financial services. And obviously, that's a huge thing. Is because of the regulatory constraints, like, there's just some things you can't say. Any thoughts there?
It's tough because my wealth advisor, like I was coaching him on how to do this, and he started pushing like compliance, locked him in, right? So I think what he ended up doing was just creating his own personal blog and running it through compliance about what can I and can't I say, because you have all the disclaimers and you can't use this to invest or whatever. But he was able to find a middle ground with them where it was a little bit more structured. I think the thing that compliance is freaked out about is the unstructured communication.
Yeah.
Like the tweets and the, like just random stuff going out all over the place. But I think if you were to take it upon yourself, like there's a lot of tools out there where you can almost create your own little portal where it's your little world of what you do. It's not on your company's website or anything like that. Like what are some of those portal things? There's one here in Boston. I forget, but whatever. It's you can actually create your own little world where you can post like white papers and write blogs and those type of things, and do it in a little bit more structured manner.
Like
So I think if you were, what's that?
Postwire?
Yeah, Postwire, those type of things. Yeah, exactly. And so I think you could put something like that together and say, hey, look, what can I put out there? And if I were to put it out in a structured way, would that be more acceptable? Maybe you write a post and then you get them to just give the thumbs up and then it goes on your post and it's a little bit more of a consistent as opposed to, and then what you can do is you can tweet and post about that. You know what I mean? So you have a hub of what's allowed, and that's what my financial advisor does. He has kind of like this hub of here's my blog post where once a week he kind of gives his thoughts about the market, where things are, right? No advice, just hey, here's my thoughts. And he runs it by compliance, and they say, yep, this is good. And then he tweets about it, he posts it on LinkedIn, and he drives people towards that, and he's built a pretty impressive community now, where people now look at him as a thought leader, and every time that blog goes out, it gets one of his investors, like me, to think, think, and be like, damn, now I ask him a question, hey, should we be investing in that? Like, what do you think about that? Now he can sell me. So that's, maybe a middle ground where if you go to them with a little bit more of a structured approach, they might be up for it.
Yeah, I like that approach because it actually positions you as an expert, someone who can actually talk about like real stuff. Very much like we were talking about back in April when we had Lori Richardson talking about personal brand and building up your presence. That's a good way of actually doing that.
Yeah.
And questions from Benny? No, over here in the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, ask away.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
All right. So my name is Aaron from 2020 On-Site Optometry.
Cool.
All right. So we bring eye care to your office. My question is, how do you find talent? So I'm a sales leader in my organization, and I'm trying to find that talent that isn't the robot.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things I've read? Mark Roberge's book. I don't know if you've read through
The Sales Acceleration Guide is a really good book.
Right. So I wonder, how do you judge that criteria? How are you doing it?
How to find talent.
Yeah. That's a whole other topic, but I'll give you my perspective on it. The number one, this actually goes back to the little known, the Jack Welch thing. So when I was at Thrive, we were about 50 people, right? And and when we were like 5 people, 10 people, everybody was all fired up about, everybody's bought in. 20 people were all bought in. When we had like 50, it was kind of like that 51st person that we brought on board just didn't have it, right? I was like, And so I went to a seminar that Jack was doing here in Boston, and there was 800 people in the seminar, right? And Jack's style is it's just a Q&A thing. He doesn't present anything. So I stood up, and I'm like 25 years old, and I stood up in front of 800 people. I was like, Jack, you talk about passion and all this other stuff. I said, how do you instill your passion on somebody else, right? Because I got these, and I told him 50 people, 51st person, whatever. And he looked at me in front of all 50 people, and was like, you're looking at it completely wrong. And I was like, oh shit. And he was like, look, you can't hire you can't teach passion. You can't instill your passion on somebody else. You have to hire it. And you can teach skill, you can teach ability. You can't teach work ethic, and you can't teach passion. So that's what I look for. I look for passion. I look for kids, like one of my favorite interview questions is, what are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? And it has, and by the way, I do not care what you're passionate about. But so like, cause here's the answer, right? Oh, I really like customers. I enjoy working with people, and it's one of the things that I really enjoy. It's like, all right. Versus the kid that's like, holy shit, Tom Brady. Did you see him the other day? 25 for 25 on the practice field? Holy shit, Edelman went out way too early. Break my fucking ankle. If he's in trouble, I'm gonna be so pissed. Right? Like, I don't give a shit if football has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm hiring you for. If you explain it to me like that, I'm hiring you. Because my job as a manager is to then take that passion and get you to believe in my company. Right? Get you to believe in what we do, even a little bit compared to what you love to do. So why I just look for kids who are passionate. That's why I go, you know why? That's why I go to the mall and I watch those kids at the kiosks and like the kid who's like really aggressive and just loves, hey man, come on, let's talk. Or, walking through a lot of these trade shows, the kid who's really aggressive versus the one that's sitting in the back on their iPhone. Like I want, like, hey, and they might work for a shitty company and come over and be like, hey, you actually, I like your style, man. You want to come over and you'd be interested in a job? Like, I'll poach off other people because I want to find that passion, right? I want to find that passion because I can do something with that. I can't teach work ethic. That's the one thing that a lot of people are giving millennials a lot of shit for these days is, they don't have that drive. They don't have that, hey, I'm going to come in super early, I'm going to stay super late, right? They do, you just got to find out what drives them, right? And I think that's, so as any advice that I could get, I don't know how to find them, but if you put the lens on of looking for passion as opposed to abilities and skills, it opens up a whole new, you might find somebody that's in a completely different industry that has no idea what you sell, but is just driven to be successful. I'm going to hire that kid all day long.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Any a question? Yeah, please.
Jeremy Levier from Navisite. My question's about where the line is between automation and personalization, specifically like how do you split your day up, number of dials. The old way is, and I've been at a company one time, somebody made 200 dials in a day, and my manager today actually emailed me, he said, he's old school and he wanted me to make 100 dials today. And so my thinking is, okay, I can make 100 dials, or I can make only maybe 40 or 50 dials and personalize the approach more, do a little bit of research, not a ton, but personalize the outreach and do a little research and maybe follow, retweet them on Twitter or something. But if I do all that, then I'm not going to make 100 dials. I made only, where's that line in, between, really pound the phones or being able to personalize it?
So,
is it 80 dials,
So the line between trying to balance out the grind, doing all of the dials, the sales as a numbers game approach with, trying to be a little bit more novel or outside the box. And what do you say to that?
Yeah, the number's 82. No.
82. So do 82 dials, 50 tweaks.
Yes, no, it's obviously dependent on your market and those type of things, but my approach goes back to that tiering out your accounts, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and I'll walk you through my strategy is, I pick 25 accounts that I follow on all those, Sales Navigator, all those things, and I have a morning routine where every morning from 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, instead of checking my fantasy leagues and getting all pissed off about that type of stuff, or my dad, to this day my dad still reads the morning paper, right? The physical morning paper, right? And which is fine, but the problem with the morning paper is 75 or 80% of the morning paper is completely irrelevant to what I care about, right? But now we have tools that we can follow and we can have information come to us that we actually want to read about, that we should be reading about, right? Like Feedly. If you're not using Feedly, Feedly, it's a free resource, it's an RSS aggregator. You can create a sales folder in Feedly, dump all your sales blogs into there and look at all the headlines and scan through and see which ones you like. The Owler, if you're not using Owler, use it. It's a free tool, OWLER. You can put it's like Google Alerts on crack. And what happens is you get one email once a day with all this stuff that's happening within your clients, right? And so what I do is I spend an hour every morning, right, just sifting through data feeds. And I might only send out 3, 4, 5 emails to some really high quality targeted email accounts, right, like targeted accounts. And then the rest of my day, I block and tackle. I'll do an hour, I do things in hour chunks. An hour's worth of this activity, an hour's worth of that activity, right? So for an hour, I'm gonna call every CIO in the healthcare industry and I'm gonna say the same thing, right? And this is where, remember I was saying earlier that my favorite way of running a call blitz is to reverse engineer a case study? Well, if I get a case study and it's a persona and I got a message and I got questions and I got a story, for an hour I'm going to call every CIO in the healthcare industry and say the same thing. Hey, we show CIOs in the healthcare industry how to rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. If somebody picks up the phone, holy shit, I got some questions that I can ask that sound like I know what I'm talking about and I got a story to tell. And then in that hour, I can track how many calls, how many referrals, how many meetings. I usually do a half-hour prep for a 1-hour call blitz. In that half hour, I get my list right, I get my message, I get my questions, I get my story, and I run my list. And so during that hour, I'm not doing research, I'm not looking up phone numbers, I'm not sending information, I'm hammering the phones. And if I do that, I can usually get 25, 30 dials out in an hour, no problem. So I'll do an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. That gets me to about 50 to 60 dials a day. Easy, easy. And that leaves me a ton of flex room. So with an hour every morning, and then an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, you got the volume and you got the quality there too. That would be my suggestion.
I think that's a huge, huge thing. You just schedule it. And spend some of that time where you can be dicking around doing other stuff.
Yeah.
And spend that time in the morning. You can get a good hour and queue things up. And that's the good thing about automation. I use tools like Buffer.
Yep.
It's been a huge, huge thing for me.
Yep.
Things like Growth Champ to also kind of throw things out there throughout the day. And so it seems like I'm involved and I try to create communications and conversations online. But that all happens in the morning, so I can focus my day on actual execution. So you're not going to change your manager's mind. Your manager, the only thing that's going to change is when you start getting results.
Well,
so that's also the point about measuring this stuff, like A/B testing.
Yes.
And if you're getting results from what you're doing, and you're really religious about like tracking that and having the metrics, then you can actually go back to your manager and say, look, I've been doing this.
Well, that's another good point that I was going to make is take a beating for a week. All right, take a beating and don't do the activities, but do what you think is the right, but be very specific at tracking them. So for a week, do what he or she is asking you, right? And measure the results there. And then for a week, don't. Do some research, that type of thing, and see what the results are there. Hopefully, you can then come to him and say, hey, I did it your way and this was the results. I did it my way, and he would probably be all sorts of pissed off at you for that week, right? Just make sure you're not on PIP or something like that. But do that and then come to him with the results and say, look, I could keep hammering the phones and littering our marketplace and telling people to take off their lists, or I could do this and I could get a 30% conversion ratio versus a 2% conversion ratio. What do you want me to do? And if your manager says, I still want you to do that, I would go find another job. Seriously, because I wouldn't want to be in that world, right? If you come with facts and you come with data and you say, look, this is a better approach and they're still going to hammer you, then I would do something different. What's up? Ryan had a question first and then I'll come to Jody.
Ryan Tully, Enterprise Sales Executive for a company called Metallurgic. John hired me 9 years ago. And on fact, he actually sent me home from shadowing him on a on-site because I showed up in jeans.
Interesting.
Old school.
That was a learning lesson.
Looking for that talented individual, right?
There you go.
So my question would actually be a follow-up question to this gentleman. It's a great question, by the way. What do you look for? Assuming that you're lucky enough to find that meeting, right,
Yep.
that interview, and you're talented enough to actually sell that person on whatever it is that you're selling, right? Your vision, right, and inspiring them to actually come to you. How do you retain that person? I mean, because they're going to get really good. That's
Yeah.
the thing. And the company can only retain that person. The income level won't retain that person for so long. You have to inspire the lead, right? So what would your advice be for sales?
Okay, so the question is, after hiring, they're successful, how do you keep them on board?
Yeah, it's tough. A players are always A players, right? I mean, I know Jack Welch distribution of talent. You got your A's, your B's, and your C's. You got your 10 to 20% A's, your 60 to 70% B's, and your 10 to 20% C's. With your A's, you just got to over-communicate with them and challenge them and give them more and more responsibilities. I loved my A's back at Thrive, right? Because I was able to give you guys assignments. You know what I mean? Hey, Ryan, why don't you go and look at what's a good way to get through a gatekeeper? Why don't you do research on that? Come back and teach the team. Hey, Scotty G, why don't you figure out a new process to go after this and then come back and teach us on that? So I would delegate, which gives you more responsibility, and then just over communicate with the A's. I think your number one job as a manager is to coach your B's. Because you just got to treat your A's as rented space, because they're either going to get promoted or go find some other work to make more money, and you can't really prevent that. You can't hold that back. You just got to let it go. But your B's, those are the ones where you focus most of your time, because you coach them to be your A's, to be a bench. So when that A leaves, there's not that massive gap, and you got somebody that can fill in the gap. So I would challenge. I would figure out what drives them. Here's another thing about management is with my A's, I don't set the goals for my A's. I let you set your goal. Like, all right, Ryan, what do you want to do this year? I'll say, if you hit your quota, if you get 120% of your quota, what do you want to do? Oh man, because it might not be money, right? It might be an extra week of vacation. It might be driving a Ferrari, like that's like renting a Ferrari for a week and doing that or whatever, right? And so you set that goal, and then it's a long-term thing, right? Where B's, I set more like monthly and quarterly goals. All right, let's work on these goals together. And C's, it's daily goals. All right, because C's are usually C's for a reason. They're used to losing. I'm serious. Like sales about momentum. No, it's true. Like if you suck, usually it's because things pile up and they just keep getting worse. And so what you have to do with a C is you got to get them back on the winning track again. And the easy way to do that is look for little wins. Like today, can you get 3 people on the phone today and have a decent conversation? Yes, all right, good job. Tomorrow, can we get 1 meeting tomorrow? Yes, good job. You know what I mean? And it's short-term stuff. But it's one of those things where you show them what to do, but you don't over-invest in them. Because if you over-invest in your C's, then you're telling your B's and your A's that you got to suck in order for me to get your attention. And so that's why I want my B's to be like, all right, I'm focusing on you because you care, right? Because you want to be better. Your A's, it's just like, hey man, like let's go. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to push you hard without being a jerk about it. So.
And one good point about that is your A's aren't really going to jump around unless it's they come into a situation that's really bad, and generally they don't make those mistakes. So they usually have a pretty good radar for the good situations and the bad situations. And so as long as they're able to really hit it out of the ballpark, for a few years, they'll stick around for 3 or 4 years. And then they'll start looking around. That was actually something that a few folks that I've spoken to over the past year, Eric Foley, for one, really brought home to, in terms of mentioning just management of your top reps. Jill, you had a question, so.
Sure, it's a question and sort of a comment. At Jill_Rowley is who I am.
Hashtag awesome.
Hashtag social selling. I like your advice about to be interesting, you must be interested in something other than yourself. To make it about your customer and not about you. One of the things I think from a research perspective, I like your advice about keeping it tight. What do you think about, so I have 2 A accounts, like 2 companies that I have to work with in my life. And so one of them is GE. And I have a long relationship with many people within the company. Beth Comstock, who used to be the CMO, is now in charge of growth and innovation. Anytime Beth sends a tweet, I get notified in real time. She had tweeted about this new learning how to code for kids, and I bought $75 the Osmo game and sent it to her.
Nice.
And she took a picture of it and tweeted it.
Nice.
So as we start to think about, in particular, larger opportunities, being more human, being more relevant, I didn't send her an ebook on social selling. I didn't send her my pamphlet on tweets about social selling. I didn't even mention social selling. What do you think about incorporating touch points like that? Like anytime Beth is being interviewed live and I know about it, I'll actually live tweet her interview. So that she knows I'm not tweeting social selling, Beth, you gotta talk to me about, I'm tweeting about her and what she cares about, making it about her. How do you train to that? How do you train to that? It's time consuming. How do you train to that?
That's an awesome story, Jill. To me, I don't know if I'll be able to reiterate the question, but how do you actually kind of teach this idea of selling as a human, actually caring about the person? I think really it speaks more about investing in the people that are your prospects and customers. And it's kind of hard to do that. I don't necessarily expect the SDR that's just on the job for 6 months to be able to do some of that highly personalized executive level outreach. But we should try to invest in that. I just want to share one example before you answer the question. So it's a little company that in the recruiting space, and I've gone back and forth over social media, but there wasn't really much communication. And to me, I've interacted with a lot of recruiting agencies. So one day I got this box in the mail. I open it up, and in the box is a cigar and a T-shirt from my alma mater, Boston University. Any BU grads here, by the way? Awesome, you're the winner tonight. But you win the big prize. I don't know what it is yet, but let me know afterwards. But that was super, super cool. It was very thoughtful, it was personal, it was a handwritten note, and it was a company that was something new. And if you want to know about something new, Meg is over there in the back. Please raise your hand, because that's very much deserving of the attention. Because that, to me, is real social selling.
Yeah.
So how do you teach that? If you can.
Well, you can, and this is how I go to, the whole thought leadership stuff. Like, give me a break. I go with Gary Vaynerchuk, and he says, you can't be a 22-year-old life coach, okay? Like maybe for 6 years old you can't, 6 years old. But it's the same thing with thought leaders. Like everybody's like, oh, you're gonna be a thought leader. There's no way you're gonna be a thought leader at 22, 23. Challenge yourself. I got myself in all sorts of trouble at a SASSR event because I stood up on stage. I'm like, could you please stop teaching 23-year-old kids how to be challengers? Like, it's just ridiculous for a 22-year-old to be like, oh, excuse me, sir, I know what to do. Let me tell you how to do your business. Like,
I applaud you, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I got in a lot of trouble for that one. But whatever. But the idea where social selling flipped for me, because I'm 40, right? I'm at the Gen X stage of looking at all this stuff going, yeah, really? Like, yeah, great. Yet another thing I need to do to be successful in sales. But where it flipped for me was, instead of just posting and tweeting stuff to build my brand and that type of crap, I started to look at all this stuff as a way to educate myself first. Of things that I was genuinely interested in. So for instance, I go after the SaaS industry is my industry. That's the #1 industry I focus on. So guess what? I gotta go follow. I use Feedly, and I have a folder in Feedly called SaaS, and I go follow the top thought leaders in SaaS and what they're saying. And I read it, not so that I can repost it. I read it so I can educate myself. So I can say, oh, that's interesting. And when I come across something that's interesting, I share it out there, and I put some context around it. There's another thing Gary Vee talked about, is like content versus context, right? Everybody says content is king, content is king, content is king. He's like, all right, fine. If content is king, then context is God. And to me, that struck me as sales versus marketing. Marketing is content, sales is context. If you are not putting any context around your content,
we're tweeting that right now,
right? But if you are not putting any context around your content, then you're no different than marketing. That's why, like Buffer, I love it, but a lot of like this, like Hootsuite, like people just sign up all their reps for Hootsuite or whatever it is, and all of a sudden turn on these tweet bots, and it's like, no, like you have to put some thought into it. And I think that's, if you teach kids that this is the stuff you should be interested in. If you're going after CEOs, you should learn what CEOs care about. If you're going after the healthcare industry, you should educate yourself on what the f is happening in the healthcare industry, all right? And read that stuff to educate. I'll admit it, I'm not a big book reader. I don't read a lot of books, all right? I went to state school, drank my way through. But I love blogs. I love like that one page, because there I can get something. And I follow people like that. And I think that's how you can start to be like, ooh, I found value in this. And maybe, just maybe, my audience will, if I'm following stuff that I think my audience is interested in. And so that's one point. The other point is the really customized stuff, like sending something in the mail. I mean, that's few and far between, but I mean, think about the last time anybody got a handwritten letter and, a thank you card in the mail. It makes all the difference in the world. One of these things blew me with Salesforce. When they bought ExactTarget, you guys remember ExactTarget is like a $2.5 billion acquisition, right? And I thought that was the marketing automation thing, but Pardot is actually the marketing automation piece. ExactTarget, you know what a big piece of ExactTarget's business is? Direct mail. They send packages of crap in the mail to people, and I'm sitting there like, a company like Salesforce.com spends $2.5 billion on a company that sends crap in the mail? What? obviously there's something to it, right? And it's a way to stand out. It's a, you know, and I'm not saying I do that for everybody. For those tier ones though, absolutely. I'm following them, I'm figuring out where they go. And you don't want to be cheesy about it or like stalker type, like, whoa.
Don't be social slutty.
That's like,
Yeah.
you know, like the
Don't be social slutty. I think that's a tagline for tonight. That's gonna be the recap blog post. Do not be social slutty.
True. I mean, because that gets creepy, right? When you all of a sudden start to get too personal with me, that's just like, all right, back off there, pal. That's weird. But, you know, like I think the BU thing is like on the borderline, right? It's like, all right, you know, but it's like once you get over into, you know, hey, John, I saw you, you know, you're at this event, or, you know, you were at your parents' house this weekend in Virginia, and, you know, I saw you by the pool with your kid because I was snapping about it. Like, all right, that's weird. Like, I will say I'm getting a lot of snaps from kids. Like, kids snap me questions. I love it, by the way. Snap me all day long. I'll answer every single question directly if you want. John M. Barrows, all one word. I love it, but it's kind of weird because I don't get it. Some kids are snapping me like they'll be sitting in bed without their, like a guy will be sitting in bed with without his shirt on, be like, hey, John, what's up? And I'm like, that's just strange. Like, I don't know how this whole works. Like, I'm not 22 anymore, but that's kind of weird that you're in bed snapping me a question without your shirt on, and it's, so I think there's a line with the social stuff. But I think the more personalized you can get, the better it is. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like one very salient tip for folks: don't just like tweet something or put something up on LinkedIn. Have an opinion.
Yeah.
That's how
Context.
we think we should be thinking and be thoughtful about what we share, and that actually gets other people to think. And that's that allows you to start some conversations.
2 points on that. Like, it drives me nuts when kids just flip out, hey, really good 39-page ebook here. You know how many 39-page ebooks I have in my things to read folder? Anybody got a things to read folder? Yeah, I use Evernote. It's all in there. I haven't read anything in that folder, not one thing. But if a rep were to actually flip it out and say, hey, really cool 39-page ebook here. Hey, if you're a VP of sales and trying to integrate social selling, you might want to take a look at pages 22 to 35 because that's really where the guts of this is. Or, you know those webinars that we all sign up for, right? I sign up for hundreds of webinars. You know how many I actually attend? 0. You know why? Because I know right afterwards I'm going to get that email. Sorry, you missed the webinar. Here you go. Here's the link, and it's going to go in my things to read folder, and I'm never going to look at it again. All right? If a rep were to ever take that and say, hey, John, I saw you signed up for that webinar. I noticed you missed it. You know what? Based on what I know about you, if you start listening to this webinar at minute 22 and you listen from minute 22 to 35, that's really where the big core of the value of this webinar is. I thought you might find that interesting. Not let's talk about it, not let me say. If a rep ever did that, I would literally fall out of my chair and I would look at them completely different than I would look at the rep that's just blasting me with template email shit.
I've actually got that one time exactly.
Right?
And it was mind-blowing. And they sent the link, and there was a YouTube. And there it just started at 5 minutes and 58 seconds.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, okay, that's impressive. One last question, I don't want to take too much time. And by the way, stick around afterwards. We're actually going to hit the corner pub, or the corner street pub, whatever, just a couple blocks away. Just get some drinks, maybe grab some food, whatever. But before we do that, is there one book, could be a movie, I know I could cheat here, but at least something that you've maybe read or seen or been exposed to recently that's been kind of super inspiring?
Yeah, I got a book and a movie. My favorite sales movie of all time. It's not Glengarry Glen Ross, it's not Boiler Room, and it's not Wolf of Wall Street. It's Tommy Boy.
Yeah. Yes, Tommy Boy!
Go watch Tommy Boy. If you haven't seen it in a while, go watch it with the sales lens on. It's the greatest sales movie of all time. And my favorite book is, I told you I'm not really a reader as far as books are concerned, but I like this one. Well, Trish Bertuzzi just came out with an awesome one, by the way. I would highly recommend you reading that one. I'm halfway through it. It's awesome. But the book Influence by Robert Cialdini is one of my favorites. It's not a book on sales. It's a book on psychology and why we do the things the way that we do them. And it's a really powerful book about how to communicate with people, how to interact. And it's all directly related to sales. It's a super easy read. So Tommy Boy, and also Pursuit of Happiness. Go watch that one. You think you work hard? Yeah, right. Ryan attested this. I took my whole team. My whole team was like at Thrive. They were like, "Oh, John, you work us so hard. You pay us so, you don't pay us half as much as all our friends and work us twice as hard." Wham, wham, wham. I'm like, really? Y'all think you work hard? Really? Interesting. All right, you know what? Midway through the day, I'm like, we're gonna take a field trip. We're gonna, you know, put you that. You're right. I treat you guys too rough, right? Like, we're gonna go see a movie. They're like, what movie? I'm like, don't worry about it. Start Pursuit of Happiness. They walked out going, all right, we get it. I'm like, please, y'all think you work hard. You roll in here at 8:30 with a nice warm ass cup of coffee. You make a few cold calls. And you're home by 5 o'clock eating dinner in your nice warm, you know, bed and stuff like that. Working hard. That guy's, you know, saving 7 seconds of dial by not hanging up the phone so we can get to the shelter so we can have shelter for his kid. That's working hard. I thought I worked hard. I don't even hold a candle to that guy. So those 2 movies, go watch them tonight and read that book. It's a fun one. All right? Cool?
Super awesome. Let's give it up to Mr.